Hey everyone, welcome to Polymatter XYZ. My name is Ingmar, and in this video I'll be showing you how I use Reallusion's Character Creator 3 and the Skingen plugin to quickly create a real-time 3D character model. This video is a time-lapse recording of my process inside of Character Creator 3, which is not a very expensive application in its most basic form, but for anyone that's interested in saving the most time and getting the best quality and results, I do recommend that you consider the 4-in-1 Ultimate Digital Human Bundle. One of the benefits of this bundle is that it comes with the Human Anatomy Body Morphs, which allows you to very quickly rough in your character's body shapes. I then head on over to the head and start roughing in the overall head shape and facial features. And I generally start going from the larger shapes all the way down to the finer details. You'll see me jumping around over different body parts between the head and the face every now and then, just to try and make sure that I have got a consistent progression across the design of the body and that I'm not over detailing one part and forgetting about the rest. With the headshot morphs that come with the headshot plugin, you can really get into sculpting very fine details and customizing your character's facial features. So this character's name is Kotøsøvn. I'm creating her for a environment piece that I'll be doing in Unreal Engine. What I'm trying to achieve with their design is to get a sense of how humans will, in the near to far future, have less of a recognizable and stereotypical appearance when it comes to racial identity and cultural identity. And as you can guess from her name, she's probably of some kind of East Asian, Japanese, and Scandinavian descent. And that is what I tried to achieve in her facial appearance. So what are the benefits of using an application like Character Creator instead of doing your sculpting in ZBrush and heading over to Substance Painter for texturing and then going into Maya, Max, Blender or Cinema 4D for your rigging and animation? And in my opinion, Character Creator isn't there to replace them. It's just adding a rapid prototyping layer to your workflow. And it offers a way to get a production ready, fully rigged and animation ready base mesh, which you can send into ZBrush at any point. There's a great workflow between ZBrush, Substance Painter, and any of your other DCC applications. And especially if you are able to get the Character Creator pipeline version and 3D Exchange, Reallusion has done a great job at ensuring that your characters can easily integrate into your existing workflows. Personally, my motivation in using Character Creator came from two separate pursuits. The one was that I wanted to find a way to automatically rig and have my sculpted character models animation ready as soon as possible. My background is in architecture and environment art, and even though I've been messing around with characters for over a decade, and even before I started working on architecture and environments, I've never really enjoyed the process of rigging and skinning just because of the repetition and knowing that I'd rather spend that time designing and creating details. I was very excited when I first discovered Character Creator because it really allows you to automate the rigging and skinning parts of the character workflow. I think the typical human character can easily be created inside of Character Creator without the need of doing additional sculpting inside of ZBrush, but the ZBrush link feature is hugely beneficial if you're working on a non-human character, some alien form, or if they need some surface details which aren't typically found inside of a morph slider. You're even able to create your own morph sliders, and I also think that you'll probably, if you're working on older characters with very specific wrinkle maps, you'll probably want to sculpt that inside of ZBrush and extracting that as a detailed map. And sending your character into ZBrush, if you're working on a 3D scanning workflow, if you've got a photogrammetry scan of an actor or specific character that you want to get into Character Creator for the rigging and animation abilities, you can definitely do that with inside of ZBrush, and perhaps I'll do a video on that at some point. If you feel like the pace of this video is too fast and you'd like to see a slower, more detailed explanation of how I approach each slider, then leave me a comment, and if there's enough interest, I'll probably do a more detailed series later on. Character Creator also has a basic sculpting brush, which allows you to target specific vertices and areas of the base mesh that you want to adjust if you find that you're not really finding the exact area that you want to adjust with the sliders. It's not nearly as detailed as the sculpting experience that ZBrush offers, but it's really helpful if you don't have all of the add-on facial morphs and body morphs from Reallusion. You'll see me doing a lot of flex testing with the sliders, testing out all the furthest extremes of the slider on the far left and far right, but you're not limited to those extents. You'll see there at the bottom there's a bake button, so if you feel like that you've reached a point where you can't achieve the morph that you want, you can always just bake it and morph it further on. You're really not limited to how much you can bake and extend your slides, but you will at some point see considerable distortion on your base meshes. Now at this stage I think that Kotøsøvn is really starting to resemble the image that I had of her in my mind. She's not entirely recognizable of where on earth she could come from, because she doesn't come from Earth. She's got a bit of a East Asian appearance with a good measure of European, maybe a bit more North European, and certainly other mixes as well, but I'm mostly trying to achieve a look that is very believable in terms of what a human could look like now and in the future, but also not too typical and recognizable in how humans are perceived today, just because I wanted her to be removed from the current cultural stereotypes, and I'll be adding a lot of narrative details to her as the series goes on, and I really want her and her people and her community on her space station to have a very unique sense of identity and allow her unique culture to provide some color and personality to the environment that I'll be doing. At this point, I'll be moving on to her body for a bit. She's currently resembling a swimsuit model a bit too closely. The base models are a bit too perfect in my opinion, and I like adding some imperfections and just a little bit of humbleness to characters. Someone that's a bit more relatable to real people, and just being a bit more honest overall about what people do look like. And even though I'm not even planning on showing a lot of the skin details due to the clothing that she'll be wearing, I like to set up the characters as anatomically realistic as possible, just for their own sake and just to help me believe in their characters as a whole. I'm just about coming towards the first round of morphing her body and facial features right now, and I've covered quite a lot of ground, but there's still a lot of customizations that can and will be done. But at this point, it's a good time to do some facial expression flex tests. It's a really good idea to do this as often as possible throughout your process whenever you've worked on your face, just to make sure there's no misalignments like these eyelids that don't close properly. And I've also identified another issue here on her face with the intersection of her inner mouth edges that goes through her cheeks. And I'm just going through all these different expressions and kind of in a way anticipating how far her facial animation might be stretched to, just to try and catch all of the little snags. And then it's just a matter of either going through all of the sliders, or if you're familiar with that specific issue, you can find that one morph and tweak it back to where it doesn't intersect. Alternatively, there's also a sculpting brush that you can use, which can more easily target specific vertices or edges if you're struggling with finding the correct morph slider. So just heading back to the face now and making some additional tweaks, and this is actually a good time to test how the model looks with hair. At this point we've come quite used to a bold character, which she definitely won't be, and it's a good idea to just see what to expect. And even though these models are a bit ridiculous, it does give us a good idea of what to anticipate and what to work towards. So it's just a matter of fine-tuning some of the facial features now. There's still a couple of areas and morphs which I haven't targeted directly. Now, spending all this time on morphs and sliders can, in a way, take longer than it would have been by just quickly and rapidly sculpting those details in ZBrush. But once again, this model is production ready, it's rigged, and the little bit of additional time spent in finding and adjusting sliders versus having to sculpt and then later rig is definitely worth it, in my opinion. Also, another approach that you might take is to hop directly into ZBrush from CC3 with one of the base meshes. Do all of your customization through sculpting inside of ZBrush, and once you're ready, hop back into CC3. You can export your detail sculpts as maps and use that as a material, and you'll have a rigged and animation ready character, which can then also be customized even further using CC3's morph sliders. Perhaps you want to create some variations of your design from ZBrush, or perhaps even if you made a alien species and you just want to create different versions of that species for individual characters. The possibilities are really up to you, and your choice of workflow and how you choose to work between the applications is entirely up to you. At this point I realized I just needed to make a couple of more adjustments to her body. I wasn't quite happy with her build, and there wasn't a very good match with the sizing of her arms and legs and her head, and I just needed to do a little bit more balancing to have her become a bit more of a believable character. And also, just considering the length of her arms, you can easily post the character inside of Character Creator if you wanted to do some comparisons of their limb sizes and proportions, which I did over here. And you'll start to notice just in how much detail we are able to customize these characters, and just how much flexibility there is to customize every little piece. Now, some of these adjustments that I'm making at this point might seem a bit trivial, and especially since there's going to be clothing that's covering up a lot of these parts of their body, but I think it's a good idea to at least just familiarize yourself with the character, and perhaps you'll identify a couple of blind spots and just some areas that might become an issue or clash with an idea that you have for the clothing. And because you are working with essentially a preset kit of existing aesthetic characteristics, it's a good idea to just break away from that preset nature to avoid having your characters look repetitive and as if they come from the same mold. That's definitely where a level of uncanniness can emerge. So just trying to break the pattern and giving each character their own quirks, even if only you know about it, it will make it a bit more enjoyable to flesh out these worlds that you're creating. And with that said, it's sometimes difficult to establish when enough is enough and when it's time to move on. And I think when you start asking yourself that question, it's probably a good time to call it and move on to the next part. Which brings us to the teeth, and just doing a quick facial expression flex test again just highlights another issue where I have the inner mouth edges protruding through the cheeks again. This time perhaps the facial expression is pushed a bit further than it would occur during a actual facial animation, but it's just good to work in some safety, and you'll see the solution here actually made the cheeks look far too removed from what I actually intended. So just heading back into the sculpting brush this time and just easing that out and heading back to the unsubdivided mesh and just smoothing that in, which I think ultimately just makes the anatomy a bit more believable and realistic, and just smoothing the corners of the mouth there again. And knowing that the facial expressions work really well with the final face model now, I'm ready to start focusing on the teeth, which are a very big part of the character and how we perceive them. And it's a really nice way and easy way to add an additional layer of realism and character to your models. Teeth are another source of uncanniness that can easily emerge from your model if not enough attention is given to break this perfection, which is often associated with pre-made base meshes and stock models. Character Creator really offers a great amount of customizable detail for your teeth. Each tooth can be custom orientated, custom shaped, custom spaced, and it's an overall great way to create your teeth models, even if you're not even using Character Creator for your base meshes or the rest of the character. I think that using Character Creator just to create teeth for any kind of model is a great solution. People are often hyper aware of the appearance of teeth just because it's often a source of insecurity, and it just makes such a big difference in how people perceive you. And there's a reason why the dental industry is such a huge industry. It's because people are in a way obsessed with teeth. So neglecting your teeth for a character is a surefire way to break the realism of your character. And once again, my philosophy with characters are always just work in a lot of imperfections and things that might not appear to be too beautiful on their own, but you can really achieve a sense of beauty with the balance between your features. And beauty is often more associated with the relationship between your features than the features themselves. So working in a good amount of imperfection and irregularity in your features are just a great strategy to make your characters believable. And one of the ways that you can bring in these irregularities, which I started with the teeth, is to break the symmetry. And breaking the symmetry is very important, and that's why I head back into the facial sliders, but this time just focusing on the minor micro adjustments on the left versus right sides of the face, and just breaking the symmetry enough to not to create a character that seems distorted, but enough for your brain to accept that this person isn't too perfect, because often symmetrical faces actually appears very strange to us. Something stands out with people with very symmetrical faces. There's this really neat test that you can do if you haven't done it already that really helps you understand how the symmetry or unsymmetrical nature of your face is perceived by your mind. And what you have to do is take a front-facing portrait photo of you, and along the center line of your face, create a mirror image, and which you can do for both sides of your face. And what you'll get is two kind of unique looking people, neither of which will look like you. And it just shows how our minds reassemble the visual perception of a face and in a way creates a unique signature for that arrangement of features. And the relationship between your facial features, including the subtle symmetrical differences. At this point, I was ready to start texturing, and by going to the Appearance tab and clicking on Activate Editor, you actually activate the Skingen plugin. It will generate a very realistic skin base set, and I also applied the Female Asian Full Skin preset just to get started. And like I said earlier, if you feel like this video is going way too fast and you'd like to see a slower, more detailed breakdown of every decision and explanation of every step that I make, just leave a comment below and I'll definitely consider doing a series like that if there's enough interest. Skingen Premium comes with a very extensive set of tools that can help you customize the appearance of your skin, and you can add a lot of personal details, and you can even bring in your own custom textures and keep layering as much as you need to. There's a lot of great preset content that comes with Skingen Premium and the 4-in-1 Ultimate Digital Human Bundle, and even if you don't have an exact idea of what you want to do with your texturing, you can just browse through all of the content folders and test out certain decals and texture layers and adjust the opacity, tiling, and intensities. And just by working through all of the content folders, you'll be able to achieve a fairly customized and personal texture set for your character. At this point, you can choose to do makeup, add tattoos, add scars or birthmarks, all inside of Skingen and Character Creator, or you can even send it straight to Substance Painter and do any custom texturing in there and bring it all back. At this point, I'm really satisfied with the results so far, and I'm just continuing to add imperfections to the skin and adding some minor blotches, moles, a bit of sun damage, and anything that can just help communicate the idea that this person has lived a life and that they aren't a perfect plastic doll. It really helps to have a backstory of your character, even if it's just a broad concept of them living on a space colony. For instance, Kotøsøvn probably enjoys sunbathing to some extent, and not having the benefit of Earth's atmosphere and the kind of protection it offers against UV radiation, the space colonists are entirely dependent on the effectiveness on the glass or glazing that's implemented on the space station. So that's another technological aspect that could communicate a piece of narrative, is how well is the space station built? Is it perfect? Is it offering all the protection it needs, or is it somewhat imperfect? And is there a risk to sunbathing on the station? And perhaps if you enjoy sunbathing too much, it can really result in some level of sun damage on your skin. And that's a kind of questions that I ask myself as I work, and just hypothetically exploring these narrative avenues of how the environment and how this person's life has affected their current appearance as you are creating them. So at this point, I find myself asking again, have I spent enough time? When is enough enough? And just by having that question, it's probably enough reason to realize, yes, it's at a point where I'm wrapping up, and I'll have an overview, perhaps take a break and come back later and have a quick look and make some final adjustments. But I'm really happy with the results at this point. It's looking good. I haven't spent a considerable amount of time. I've probably saved days versus if I did it in a more conventional workflow. And I hope you enjoyed this video. If you'd like to see more and see the next part of creating hair, creating clothing, and bringing her to life, please leave a comment, please subscribe, and hopefully I'll see you next time. Cheers.